This is a story about love, loss, and the long road back to light. My son Ryder was born still after what seemed to be a healthy, full-term, uneventful pregnancy. Nothing prepared us for that day or for everything that followed. In this podcast, I'll take you through the moments leading up to his passing, the immediate aftermath, and the reality of learning how to survive something that feels impossible to survive. I'll show you how I slowly found my footing again, how joy eventually made its way back into my life, and where I am today. This is not medical advice, and I'm not a therapist or healthcare professional. These are my experiences, my perspectives, and my truth. If you are walking a similar path, I encourage you to seek guidance from your care providers and find what works best for you. But this is my story, and if you're here, I hope that somewhere within it, you find a little bit of hope. Hey everyone, welcome back. This episode is going to be a little different. If I'm being honest with you, in fact, all I've ever been is honest with you, this episode may not be as hard to listen to as maybe the first or second episodes of this podcast because we've already lost Ryder here. But this is going to be just as raw, at least for me, and just as honest. I've been thinking about this podcast for over a week. What to say, how to say it, and nothing could overcome the thoughts or the emotions surrounding Ryder's birthday. Because as I'm recording this, we just celebrated Ryder's 7th birthday. 7. That number has just been sitting with me. 7 years. 7 years since I've met my son. Since I've held my son. Since I kissed his forehead. 7 years and counting now. In fact, today, as I record this, we are exactly 7 years to the day of walking into that first funeral home. Sitting down to talk about how my son would be remembered. And that was the day that we found out there were more mistakes made at the hospital. Mistakes that happened after his life was already gone because somebody never finished Ryder's paperwork. Because that paperwork was not finished. They took away the last thing that we could have given him, his name. Ryder was sent to the funeral home as baby Mendelke. Not even baby boy, just baby. My son had a name. He has a name. And 7 years ago today, learning that was taken away from him as well, and that there were going to be steps and hurdles to get that back, that was the first step in getting me here. Restoring my son's name, his story, his legacy, because Ryder does have a voice. And 7 years ago today was when I first found it. And with this podcast, he's already been top of mind more than even normal. But this past week, it's been so much different. The emotion, the loss, the memories, they haven't been tucked away. They have been right here, just under the surface of my skin, my head, my heart. I mean, that's where I put him. I'm doing this to share his story, to hopefully help others. So it's all right there. And I did not expect to feel this drained. Not physically, but emotionally, just heavy. And there's something about birthdays. They don't pass quietly. Not when you've lost a child. Because it's not just a date. It's everything that should be happening. You're not just thinking, he would be 7. You're thinking, what would he be like? What would he sound like? What would he be into? Would he be smart? What color were his eyes? What did his voice sound like? What made him laugh? And your mind doesn't stop. It tries to answer these questions so that they don't continue to not have answers over and over and over again. And there's multiple layers to this because it's not just Ryder. It's about Chandler, Merrick, and Camden. They all know that they have an older brother. They know that Ryder existed. But how would things be different if he were actually here? Would Chandler be different? Would she be less animated, less of a leader, less theatrical in everything that she does? Would her voice be louder? Would she be even more dominant because she has to compete for the space? How would Merrick and Camden look up to an older brother? How would Merrick be different? You know, he's only grown up with an older sister. And the things that he's known before finding his own voice and his own path have been princesses and makeup and, you know, nightgowns and all of those things. And it was so long before he found Spider-Man and Ninja Turtles. What would having an older brother in the house look like for him? And would our home feel fuller, louder, more chaotic? Yeah, probably, because there's an extra person there. But I can tell you, even with 3 kids after Ryder, something is missing. There's still a hole there that can never be filled. And how would we be as parents? How would we be different? Would we worry less? Would we worry more? I doubt that, but what would it be like? And so it turns inward. Are we different parents because of this? Are we better parents because of this? I know we're more aware in a way that's almost impossible to carry, because I know for me, I hover more. I pay attention to everything that could be harmful or bad when it comes to our children. Every cough, every fever, every injury, every little thing, because my mind doesn't go to they'll be fine, because I know that that might not be the case. It goes to the worst case scenario every single time. I am always waiting for the other shoe to drop. There have been countless nights where I haven't slept. Getting up, checking Chandler, checking Merrick, checking Camden, just to make sure that they're still breathing over and over again. That's the weight of this path. There's a clarity that changes everything. And it's good and it's bad. Even when things go wrong at work, even after being laid off, which is entirely stressful, I don't wish it upon everyone or on anyone. But I know with walking this path that that's not my worst day. I know what my worst day felt like, and this isn't it. And so I'm going to be okay. Because the loss doesn't just live in what happened. It also lives in what never will. The birthdays, the graduations, all of the firsts. When it comes to Ryder, we mourn everything that should have happened just as much as we mourn the person that we met, the baby that we held. We mourn all of the things, I don't want to say that other people take for granted, but the things that you find joy in. Your son's first hit at a baseball game, their first dance, the first time you shared your favorite movie with them. All of those things that bring joy still bring us joy, but we mourn the fact that our oldest son is not there to do these things. When you see a child the same age, your mind goes there. You don't have to be reminded. It is always there. It changes everything, every happy moment. There's still happiness, but it's not just happy, because somebody is always missing. There is a little bit of sadness in all of the joy. During the holiday seasons, every Christmas morning, when the kids are excited to open their gifts from Santa, if you look closely at Anne or at myself, yes, we're happy and there's joy there, but there's also a little bit of sadness because something is always missing. Someone is always not in the picture. But in the middle of all of this, in some ways, we have been lucky. We know that there are thousands upon thousands of people across this country and throughout the world that are walking the same path that we are. And although it may not look exactly the same, it may be infertility, it may be pregnancy loss, it may be stillbirth, it may be infant loss. We know that we've been lucky to find our people and to find a group through No Foot Too Small, which I know I've mentioned before, and this isn't about pushing anyone towards one organization over another. It's just, this is just the one that I know and one that's been so incredible for our family. They have given us a space to say Ryder's name, to celebrate him, and to acknowledge that he was here. And that matters. If you're walking this path, it is really important to find your people. And I know we have a whole episode on this, so I won't beat a dead horse here. But finding someone that understands, or a group of people who understand, that can change everything. And that can be the difference in your own survival or not. Finding your people really does change everything. It gives you hope in this space. It gives you a place to celebrate and remember. And it also gives you that okay to find joy again, because that is really, really difficult. And we will get into that in the next episode when we talk about another first. But it's so important to your own mental health, your own survival, to be able to do that, to find joy in this space of total sadness. And so finding people, anyone, any group of people that knows what this is like, can change everything. And so I mentioned the funeral home, or the first funeral home, earlier. And I do want to skip forward to the second funeral home where we actually had Ryder services in Iowa. Because there's something about Ryder services that I think is really special. In the planning, there were certain things that were triggers for us. I know for me, going and looking at the floral arrangements, that was another time when I broke down hard. I just couldn't fathom picking flowers out for my son's funeral. But there were things in the services that stick with us, that were impactful and beautiful. And one of those things is, just knowing that we didn't want a traditional prayer card. I don't know what losing Ryder has done to my faith long term for the rest of my life, but I know that it's changed it. And I know in that moment, or I knew in that moment, that I did not want a traditional prayer card. I didn't like the way they looked. I didn't like what was written on them. We wanted to create something special for our son. And so I wrote a poem. And so I'll share that with you now. And my apologies in advance if I don't get through it without breaking down. But again, this is unscripted. It is raw. It is real. So this is the poem that I wrote for our son. Sweet little Ryder, please take God by the hand. He's taking you to heaven. that had to be his plan. Ask him all those secret things that every person wants to know, like how he thought of rainbows and put magic in the snow. And when you get to heaven, I know you'll see Jaji. He's the man who picked you out just for your mom and me. For now, he'll take good care of you until we're by your side, as we wait for our reunion with every turning tide. Please know that we will think of you morning, noon, and night, and that every day we fight for you with all our strength and might. Remember, you did nothing wrong, and that we wanted you to stay. But sometimes God has other plans, no matter how hard you pray. Please watch over Mommy, because she needs you oh so bad. And remember that she loves you, and that's why she's so sad. Don't forget to do the same for me, as I'll need you by my side. Because sometimes even Daddy can't do anything but cry. We love you, we love you, we love you, is all that we can say, until the moment comes to pass when we meet again someday. And there's a line in that poem about asking God about everyday miracles, like putting magic in the snow. And on the day that we celebrated his life, in late April, it snowed. And I'm not talking a few flurries here and there. It was the heaviest snow that I can remember that late into the year in my lifetime. Almost whiteout conditions. It was a full-on January, February type snow. Heavy snow shovel, snow plow kind of snow. And in that moment, it felt like him. And it was the silent reminder in the room that he was there. And now every time it snows, we think of him. Because listening to Godspeed by the Chicks, which is the song that my wife and I chose to play for our family and us, and our extended family, as we all said goodbye to Ryder. So we were in the funeral home, standing around his urn, listening to Godspeed, and snow was falling outside. And it felt like magic. It felt like our son was there. But it's not just snow. It's also clouds. Not just the ones, not the ones in the sky, but the clouds from Ryder's blanket. We have them tattooed. We've had them printed on apparel and bands that we work out in, and we've shared with friends and family. The clouds from Ryder's blanket are everywhere, and they show up in almost every photo we have of him. And going through those photos, it hits you. And it hits you so hard. How do we only have a few dozen photos of our child? And I guess that everyone has a finite number of pictures, memories, moments that define their life. But how was this decided for our son? That his number would be so small. His life would end before it even started. How is that fair? And even with these photos, the limited number of photos, there are still some that I cannot look at 7 years later. There's a video of his baptism where I'm holding his perfect little body and I am just sobbing. And I've never watched it. I don't need to. I can remember those moments like they were yesterday. And I don't know why it hit me so hard. But in the immediate aftermath and the 7 years that have passed, it's one of the hardest times I've cried. And I think even before, it's one of the hardest times I've cried in my life. I mean, physically shaking, almost as if I was acting. I don't need to watch it. I've never watched it, not once, and I don't know that I will. Because some moments, even when they're all you have, they're just still too heavy to hold. And so, if I'm being honest, and I said that I was going to be, even some of the beautiful things that we experienced, the snow, the reminders, that magic doesn't fix everything. Because while I told my son to ask God about the snow and the rainbows, the anger, the bitterness, the sadness that I still hold, it has totally shaken my faith to the point where I do not practice anymore. And I don't know what I believe, even if I believe. And that is totally okay with me. I can tell you now, anyone listening, I don't need your comments. I don't need you to save me. I'm not knocking anyone who believes anything. It's just not there for me. And I don't need anyone to save me here. I am walking my own path. And whether I find my way back or I don't, that journey is 100% mine. And it's personal. Because if God does exist, any version of a God exists, I've got some things that I struggle with. Because I don't care about this so-called plan that I've heard about so many times over the last 7 years, that losing my son somehow fits into some plan. Well, I had plans too. And if there is a God out there anywhere, and there is a time when I meet this entity, when it's my time to no longer be here on earth, we're going to have some words. And so to wrap this up, I don't know if this is my best episode or my worst, where it falls in between. It feels a little bit all over the place, but that's what loss is. And again, this podcast, it's not scripted. It's meant to be raw. A controlled ramble, I guess. I do think about what I'm going to say. I do plan, but I'm not writing things down. But if your life feels like that sometimes, and you're walking this space that my wife and I are, this path of loss, and you feel like you're all over the place, you're not doing it wrong. Grief is not a straight line. You have good days, you have bad days. And yes, I have found my voice really early on because of some of the mistakes made and some of the anger I put into action. I found Ryder's voice, and I'm doing things to make sure his story is told. That's not for everyone. You do not have to be the same person that I am in this space of loss. My wife isn't doing some of these things, although we do talk about our son very openly all of the time. She's not doing so as publicly, and that's okay. She's not wrong for choosing a different path. It doesn't have to look the same, but you should be doing something. You should be talking to your people. And if you are a friend or a family member in this space, and you are listening to this podcast to understand or out of curiosity, and there's somebody in your world that is living this life that my wife and I are, whether it's infertility, pregnancy loss, stillbirth, infant loss, say their names. Acknowledge the loss in these moments that matter, because we're thinking it. We're sad about it, even when we don't appear to be thinking about it or sad about it. I guarantee you we are. It isn't everything. every happy moment is a little bit sad when you're in this space. With that, I think we'll move on. For our next episode, we're going to talk about one of those firsts, as I mentioned earlier. We're going to talk about our first Mother's Day after Ryder. But for now, Ryder, we love you so much, and we carry you through all of this. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you next time.